Hey guys, this is Jonathan over at American Off-Road Customs. I want to take a minute and kind of do a walk around of my Jeep. I'm sure if you've been around, you've probably seen me driving this thing on the trail a little bit, and it has taken quite an evolution over the years. I definitely am not the guy that builds everything from start to finish in one go. So where it's at right now is kind of its latest evolution of builds before I do the next evolution, which is probably going to happen in a few weeks, actually, now that I think about it. But we'll talk about what we got going on. There's a lot of stuff that has gone into this thing, and things that have gone in and then come back off because they didn't work out or whatever. So luckily for you, I've been the guinea pig, and you get the experience of that, and you don't make the same mistakes that I unfortunately had to learn the hard way. Where this thing sits right now, this is a 2012 JKU Rubicon was the original setup for this. It's on a AccuTune Coilover Conversion. So the lift height of this is probably about a 3-inch or so lift. It still has the factory 44 axle housings in there. That's the next evolution, is 1 tons. But these are about as built as they get when it comes to strengthening those as much as you can. So they've been regeared to 488s. They've got truss and gussets on there. The front has reed knuckles. We've got RCV axle shafts. We've got PSC steering, upgraded Steer Smarts tie rod. There is a Metalcloak drag link in there and track bar. Also got the Fox bump stops, which I just had rebuilt, so they're not actually installed, but they live right in these cups right here. So I got to put those back in next time I get it into the shop. The rear axle has the same kind of thing. It's been trussed. It's got Yukon Chromoly axle shafts in it, and it's also been regeared to 48. Still has the original Rubicon lockers. They just are rewired to a dedicated switch, so I don't have to use the factory switches anymore. Also, front and rear, it's got Baer racing brakes on here, so 6-piston front and 4-piston in the rear. So pretty good stopping power most of the time. I also put in some line locks so that I can differentially lock the rear axle each side. This does have an Atlas transfer case in it so that I can do like front digs and stuff like that, and being able to lock the brake on one of the rear makes that more effective than, you know, basically just dragging the whole rear all together. I can basically lock the inside tire, let the outside tire roll, and it'll really pivot a lot more effectively that way. So on the outside of this, we have a lot of GenRight armor. So the fenders, front and rear, are GenRight aluminum fenders and rock sliders. Also have the GenRight rear bumper in the back, which we'll look at when we get back there. The front is a MotoBilt Tomahawk frame chop bumper. And then I've got a Superwinch Talon series 12K winch in here to get me out of jams or help other guys out when I'm out on the trail. Also got a lot of Vision X lights on this thing. So this is their shocker light bar in the front. So this has a spot beam in the top section, and then this bottom section is an amber like floodlight. So it acts like a really good like scene light to light up the trail without really blinding as much as what this spotlight does. And then these guys are some long range like driving lights. So if I'm out kind of in the front of the pack or going fast, sometimes I'll fire those up so I can really see downrange quite a bit, you know, so I don't find myself in trouble around a dark corner or something like that as easily. This has got a Rugged Ridge aftermarket hood on here. Under the hood, there's not a whole lot of crazy stuff really under here. I do have this Banks cold air intake. I had to modify the mount for my PSC reservoir because at one point I did have a turbo in this thing, which, like I said, I learned the hard way that was not a good fit for this. So that came out, but that had to be moved for that. I have gone through 2 engines on this thing. Some of that was from my own trial and error mistakes, but eventually, you know, the dream is V8 swap in this thing, but we'll see if that day ever comes. In here, I don't know if you can really see it, but down in here. These lines are part of the brake system in here. This is what runs to my line lock stuff, but they're actually mounted under the brake booster down there. So that's kind of what this stuff is, coming off of the factory ABS module tied in there. And then there's a catch can to catch the extra oil from the blow-by, stuff like that is all under the hood there. So we'll take a look at the interior real quick. So I've got best top half doors on this thing, which is a real shame they stopped making these because these are actually pretty nice. But inside we have PRP custom seats, custom GenRight mounts in here to be able to accommodate those. And then, like I said, there is an Atlas T-case in this thing, so I got the twin stick controls on the center there. This switch cluster over here is a in-cab control for the winch, so I can turn this on and I can operate the winch directly from these buttons in and out, which is pretty nice. This other switch that's down here basically disables the factory ABS and traction control systems. I have it on a switch so that way, because it lights it up like a Christmas tree when you turn it on, but I can turn it back off, cycle the key, and it's like everything's back to normal again, which is pretty nice. Added a whole bunch of aftermarket gauges in here. I like gauges. I like lights and stuff like that, so that's kind of me just being a nerd on that stuff. So, but I like that stuff, so that I put those in there. This is my S-Pod, or Switch Pro's switch controller. Controls my lockers, controls my line locks, the lights, stuff like that. I added an auxiliary fan for the transmission cooler. So these have a pretty good factory transmission cooler, but when you're going slow, crawling on the trails, a lot of times this thing will get a little hotter than I like it to be, so I added an auxiliary fan that I can switch on and off when needed to be able to add some extra cooling to that system when needed. Okay. So in the back seat, we have another custom PRP bench seat. Underneath, we have my ARB twin compressor kind of hidden under there with a button right here. Turn that guy on and off, and then I can hook up to my air lines to do my tires and stuff through that thing, or to just an air chuck that I can use for whatever other air things I may need to do, like my trailer tires or something like that. So that's pretty much what's in the back. There's also a subwoofer, an amplifier, and stuff like that for my aftermarket stereo in here, which you can see the speakers back here. Then in the back, we've got the diabolical enclosure, which keeps all of my cargo space secured all the time. This does not have a top anymore. I sold it. So this is pretty much how it is all the time. So it's either got to be in a garage, or I have a trail cover that I put on it to keep it out of the elements if it's outside. And then this is that GenRight bumper I was talking about in the back. And then we incorporated a Vision X chase light into the back of this thing, so that if we're on dusty trails, stuff like that, I can flip on the strobes on the back of this and be a little more visible, less likely somebody to come up behind me and run into the back of me, which is pretty nice. Then on the inside, the thing that's nice about this diabolical is it's got a Moly panel on the top side that I've got some wrenches and pry bars and hammers and stuff mounted in there for convenient access whenever we do brake. I've got this Badlands trail jack mounted in there using one of MotoBilt's mount kits. So that thing's secured in there, so find yourselves needing to take a tire off or whatever. This is way safer than using a high lift. Really not a fan of high lifts. They're very sketchy. I really hope to never have to use one again, so I put that sucker in there so that I have an option to use something else when needed. A lot safer than a high lift is. And then in this case right here is a carnage welder. So that thing's really nice to be able to pull out. It's got an internal battery, literally just flip a switch, hook up the leads, and we can do welding repairs right there on the trail. So try to keep this thing as outfitted as possible. And to be honest, I put all this tooling and gear in here in the hopes that I never need it, because if I have it and I spent the money, I'll never use it, right? That's the idea there. So, but it's, you know, better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, is my philosophy there. So that's the basic overview of the Jeep. If I missed something, which I'm sure I did, or if you have questions about it, make sure you hit us up. You can also check out the profile on RevKit. It's a really cool place to see like profiles for rigs, and you can find AORC Dozer is the profile name on RevKit. It's got a full breakdown. Everything I just talked about is all broken down there. You can see pictures and check it out for yourself.